Tadekam smaramas-tadekam bhajamaha Tadekam jagat-sakshi-rupam namamaha Sadekam nidhanam niralambamisham Bhavambodhipotam sharanyam rajamaha Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. On that alone do we meditate, that alone do we worship, to that alone, the witness of the universe, do we bow, to that one who is our sole eternal support, the self-existent Lord, the raft to safety across the ocean of samsara, do we come for refuge. Om, peace, peace, peace. Good morning. I'd like to welcome three special guests. We have visiting with us Swami Nirvanananda Saraswati, who led us in beautiful kirtan last night, and also my mother and my sister. So welcome to all of you. So today our topic is Chant the Name of the Lord. It's Sri Ramakrishna's oft repeated instructions. Chant the name of the Lord. Take the Lord's name. A very simple practice, seemingly very simple practice, leading to perfection, bringing joy and peace in our lives, and ultimately bringing us to the ocean of infinite bliss. We chant this prayer in our morning, after our morning meditation, and the first two stanzas of it were beautifully sung this morning. This is a translation of the instructions left by the great spiritual powerhouse of the 15th century, 14th century, 1486 to 1534, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, the great teacher of bhakti from West Bengal. He was really a prophet of this practice of chanting the Lord's name, and spread this practice of group singing of the Lord's name far and wide, all over Bengal and all over India. He started a movement which is still spreading today, and this practice of singing the Lord's name in groups, as we see, is spreading wider and wider all over the world. Maybe just a few more words about Sri Chaitanya. He was born in a small town, a village called Mayapur, just by the town of Nadia, and he was born in a family, a scholarly family, and he took up the study of Sanskrit, and before long he became a pundit, a brilliant pundit. He was defeating all the pundits. The pundits, they have these disputes, and they'll challenge each other to arguments, and who will convince the other who is right. So he became a victorious pundit, and the other pundits fear to meet him, because if they take up a dispute, he'll win, then they'll lose face, they might even have to leave town. So he became this expert pundit. Age 16, he already had his own academy. It's called a Sanskrit Tol. He had his own academy, and then something happened. He went on a pilgrimage, and he met a great saint named Ishwar Puri, and he had spiritual initiation from him. And when he came back, he was as if it were a different man. So he was no longer interested in arguing about the fine points of logic or the scriptures. He was interested in chanting the Lord's name and in teaching others to chant the Lord's name. So Nimai Pandit, as he was called, the great Pandit, became afterwards a great preacher of bhakti, spreading the practice of Sankirtan, of chanting the name of the Lord. And he became a Swami also at the age of 24. He had sannyasa from Keshab Bharati and received the name Sri Krishna Chaitanya. And after that, he moved to Puri and lived out the rest of his life there in Puri. and making at least one trip to all over India, spreading the teachings. And he lived until age 48, at which time he disappeared. Nobody knows exactly what happened to him. Some say that he merged into the image of Jagannath at the temple at Puri. So he disappeared, leaving his body. And his only written work is these shlokas of instruction, these 8 verses of instruction, the Shikshashtakam, which really covers the essence of his teaching. We'll get right into it. The first verse, which we heard sung just now, I'd like to chant it in Sanskrit. Chetur darpanamarjanam bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadhu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatma Snapadam Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. So Sri Krishna starts out, Sri Chaitanya starts out with this image of the heart as a mirror. We heard about this from Swami Sridharananji just the other night also. The heart of the human being is a mirror which perfectly reflects the truth, perfectly reflects the divine reality. We can see the Lord in that pure mirror. The problem is, that mirror is covered with dust and dirt. And not just a little bit of dust. If we see a mirror with a little dust, we can still see our reflection in it. This mirror is covered with lots of crud, so we don't see the reflection. So this first image he gives us is of wiping the mirror of the heart clean. And how to do it? With the name of the Lord. God is. The divine is the very soul of our souls, the very basis of our being. But our hearts are not pure. The mirror is covered with dust and dirt, so we don't see it. Sri Ramakrishna says, if a mirror is covered with dirt, it won't reflect one's face. One cannot realize one's true self unless one's heart is pure. This is also one of the great teachings of Jesus. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Swami Vivekananda used to say, this sentence alone would save humankind. If all other scriptures, all other teachings of the world were lost, this one sentence alone were to remain, this would save humanity. This purity of heart, he says, will bring the vision of God. So spiritual practice is for this purpose. Swami Vivekananda says, the pure heart is the best mirror for the reflection of truth. So all these disciplines are for the purification of the heart. And as soon as it is pure, all truths flash upon it in a minute. So the mirror is already there. It's already perfect. The divine is already here. We don't need to create a mirror. We only need to clean it off. So what is this dust which is covering this mirror? What is this crud which is covering this mirror of the heart, preventing us from seeing the divine, seeing the reflection of perfection? In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, as we know, has a great discussion with Sri Krishna about all kinds of things. And in the 3rd chapter, he asks Sri Krishna, well, why is it that people do things why do we do things that we don't really want to do? Why do we do things that we know are bad? As if against our will. It's as if we're forced somehow to do these things we don't want to do. Some people call them sin. Why do people do that? What is this all about? And Sri Krishna says, well, he says, and he uses this example, also this example of the mirror. He says, the root cause is kama and krodha, desire and anger, and calls them the enemy of the wise. This is the enemy of the wise. This is what is covering the mirror. He says, just as a fire is covered by smoke, or as a mirror is covered by dust, so is the truth covered by this. The constant foe of the wise, Sri Krishna calls it, the unseizable, nityavairinam. Swami Vivekananda says, if there is dust and dirt on a mirror, we cannot see our image. So ignorance and wickedness are the dirt and dust that are on the mirror of our hearts. Well, how does chanting the name of God clean off this crud, this anger, desire, jealousy, all these things? We know we have them. How does it clean off the dust? I think it helps to think about, how does the mind actually work? The mind generally works by running in the same old ruts that it always does. In the old days, they had carriages with the narrow wheels, narrow hard wheels, and the roads were dirt roads, and as the carriages go over the roads, the ruts get worn into the road, and they get pretty deep. And so the carriages and wagons, they can't go except for in those ruts. The wagon will just run in the same rut. So we have a certain habit of thinking angry thoughts. And the mind, just like that carriage falling into the ruts on the dirt road, the mind falls into that rut and goes along happily, being angry at my boss and my neighbor and the President of the United States, whoever we want to be angry with. It keeps getting angry and angry. So when we chant the name of the Lord, what are we doing? We're making a new rut, but a good rut, not a bad rut. We're making a new rut. Or it's like a record. Those of us who are over 40 can remember what a record player is and what a record is. And the needle runs in the groove, and it won't skip out of the groove. So we're making new grooves for the mind to run in. So that's really what it's about. Also, the name itself has a power. The name itself has a purifying power. The name is purity itself, in fact. We'll get into that a little bit more afterwards. Now the next phrase Chaitanya Deva gives us is of a mighty forest fire. He calls it the Bhava Mahalavagni. The world is like a huge conflagration, a huge forest fire, and the name is that which extinguishes it. Now what is this fire? What is this fire? In the translation which we read, translated by Christopher Isherwood, Swami Prabhupada and Christopher Isherwood, we call it the worldly lust, the great fire of worldly lust, the fire of desire, that unquenchable fire of desire. Now, some will object. You Swamis are always talking about this terrible thing, desire. You Vedantists, you're pessimistic. You call the world a fire, and desire is this bad thing. What's wrong with desire? I want something. I work to get it. I get it. I get peace. I get joy. What's the matter with that? I want some ice cream. I go and get some ice cream. I enjoy it. I have a nice time. I'm happy. I want a new car. I work for it. I get it. I get some peace. I get some joy. What's the matter with that? It's true. There's no harm in that. But when we examine it a little more closely, we find that there's always another desire ready to crop up. We fulfill one desire, and for a little while we get a little satiety. But how long does it last? King Yayati of ancient India, we know the story. He was, was cursed by a sage. He pissed off a sage, and the sage cursed him to become an old man. He was a young king, and he was cursed to become an old man. And he was broken-hearted because he was all ready to enjoy his life for a good long time. And to make a long story short, his son agreed to trade his youth for his father's old age. So the son became an old man, and the king, again, Yayati, became a young man, and he enjoyed life with a vengeance. He was a king, after all, so he had all the funds available to enjoy life as only kings can enjoy. And because this is an ancient Indian story, he did so for 1,000 years. 1,000 years of enjoyment. And what happened? He finally came to his senses. He finally realized that he wasn't going to be able to satisfy his desires. As often as he thought his desires would become stilled, he found that they were only becoming stronger. And he likened it to pouring clarified butter, melted butter on a fire. You know, in the sacrifices, we pour ghee into the fire. And if we pour a good lot of ghee on the fire, it dies down for just a moment. Then it burns all the stronger. So he realized that satisfying desires in order to quench them is like pouring ghee on the fire. It makes them only stronger. Now, Sri Ramakrishna, he would point out these small things like having ice cream or even getting a new car. These are not the problem, actually, these kind of desires. He said there are two main desires which are at the root of all the problem: the desire for sex and the desire for money. These two are the insatiable desires. Not that we don't need money, not that husband and wife won't have their intimacy, but that desire, that intense desire, is not going to go away by satisfying it. And it is that desire which becomes like a fire. So there comes a time when we realize the futility of chasing all the desires, and realize that we'll never get them fulfilled by satisfying them. Then, how do we get them satisfied? We attain a state. How do we attain the state of Purna Kamaha, a wonderful Sanskrit word which means that all desires are fulfilled, all desires are stilled, a wonderful state of perfect peace and equanimity. Where do we find that? We find that in God. We find that in our true self, which is covered over by this dust and dirt, but it is there. Knowing Him, nothing remains to be known. Attaining Him, nothing remains to be desired. And true peace arises. Actually, we can say that all desire is really a desire for God. All love is love for God, only it's misdirected. Swami Vivekananda writes, "It is under the impetus of the same love that men are ready to give up their lives for their country. And strange to say, it is under the impetus of the same love that the thief steals and the murderer murders. This is the one motive power in the universe. The thief has love for gold. The love is there, but it is misdirected." So Chaitanya Deva, Sri Chaitanya says, the name of God is like a rain which falls on that fire and extinguishes it. That fire of desire extinguishes the misdirection, as it were, when we realize that the true source of the true target of our desire is the divine. That's who we really want. And the name brings with it the named. And the named is the divine, and it is there that our desires are fulfilled, or rather, there that our desires are stilled. So, Sri Chaitanya is giving us in this first line of his Shikshashtakam a glimpse, a prescription of how to proceed in spiritual life. We cleanse the mirror of the heart and extinguish the mighty forest fire raging within, and then we attain to peace. The name has that power. Now we may object. The name, just a name has the power to quell the mighty forest fire. The name has the power to clean the heart. It's just a word. What's in a name? People say, what's in a name? It's just a word. So in a reply, we say, don't underestimate the power of words. Swami Vivekananda gives a beautiful example of this. He says, sound symbols play a prominent part in the drama of human life. I am talking to you. I am not touching you. The pulsations of the air caused by my speaking go into your ear. They touch your nerves and produce effects in your minds. You cannot resist this. What can be more wonderful than this? One man calls another a fool, and at this the other stands up and clenches his fist and lands a blow on his nose. Look at the power of the word. There is a woman weeping and miserable. Another woman comes along and speaks to her a few gentle words. The doubled up frame of the weeping woman becomes straightened at once. Her sorrow is gone and she already begins to smile. Think of the power of words. So words actually are very powerful. Just think of that. How many times people come to blows just through the power of words. So if words have the power to bring us to blows, they also have the power to bring us to peace. Swami Vivekananda explains that we use this force unconsciously. What we are to do is to learn to use it consciously. And taking the name of the Lord, chanting the divine name, this is what we are doing. We are doing this when we chant the name of the Lord, knowing that the name and the named are one. There's a whole branch of Indian philosophy dealing with semantics and linguistics and how the words are and their meanings are connected, and how words and the ideas they represent or the things they point to are connected. We're not going to go deeply into that, but they note that there's a deep connection between the name of something and the thing itself, that thing which is named. And hear a word, and immediately the form connected with that word is brought to mind. Let's take an example. Suppose I were to say to you, let us sit quietly for 3 minutes, and let us just think whatever you want, but whatever you do, don't think of a white elephant. Don't think of a white elephant. Shall we try it for just a moment? Was anyone thinking of a white elephant? The word white elephant is immediately connected with a white elephant. We may not have seen a white elephant, but we've seen an elephant. We know what an elephant is. We can imagine a white elephant. We're thinking of a white elephant. So, likewise, God and His name are identical. When we repeat the name of God, we invoke the divine presence. Now, it may be argued that, well, when you say a word like elephant, well, an elephant is something that we know, and we don't know God. The answer to this is, you do know God, because God is the very basis of your being. You're the soul of our souls, the life of our life. So the name has that power to bring us to recognize our true nature. So So let's return to the Shikshashtakam. In the next line, Sri Chaitanya paints an exquisite image. Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam. O name, stream down in moonlight on the lotus heart, opening its cup to knowledge of thyself. He gives this image of a white lotus, a Kairava, which is a special kind of lotus which blooms only at night in the moonlight. There are some lotuses which bloom only at night. Most bloom in the daytime. This blooms at night when when the moon rises, and the lotus opens. And this is the lotus of Shreyaha, of felicity, of auspiciousness, of final beatitude. This is the lotus of the heart. And the name is likened to moonlight. Moonlight is not like the sun, bright and harsh. It's soft, it's subtle, and the name is streaming down on this lotus of the heart. And what happens when the moonlight shines on this lotus? It opens up and reveals what is within. If we take the image of a lotus bud, the lotus bud is a very plain-looking thing. But the lotus is hidden within it, along with its sweet fragrance. When the lotus opens, what was inside becomes visible. So it's a beautiful simile for our spiritual life. We are to make our lotus bloom. Everything is within. The divine is right here. But we have to manifest it. We have to realize it. We have to open the lotus. So, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, when the lotus opens, the bees come of their own accord to seek the honey. So, let the lotus of your character be full blown, and the results will follow. I love this image of the name streaming down as we chant the name again and again, deeply getting absorbed in it. We feel the name reverberating through our whole being, through our whole system, and falling down upon the heart, and the heart responds. The heart begins to open like a lotus. The heart is where it's all at in spiritual life. The heart is of paramount importance. Now, when we talk about the heart, we're not talking here about the physical heart. There is a physical heart, which is one of the, perhaps the most essential organ for our physical life, pumping blood throughout the whole body. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the spiritual heart, which is also connected with this human body, somewhere in the region of the physical heart, but we have to find out exactly where it is for ourselves. It's also at the center of our being. It's very subtle, and it is said that actually there are two hearts: the emotional heart, where we feel love, where we feel our heart gets broken. That's our emotional heart. We feel it right here in the center of our chest. Then, more deeply, more subtly, still there is this spiritual heart, which is often likened to a lotus. The yoga physiologists have found in the miracle of this human body different centers of consciousness, and they liken them unto lotuses because they can be asleep or they can be awakened. And when they're awakened, it's like the lotus's opening. These chakras, as they're called, are contact points between the human and the divine. So, the heart in spiritual life is to be awakened. This image of the moonlight awakening the lotus heart, this is when the first spiritual experience comes in spiritual life, when the heart awakens. So the whole struggle of spiritual life, especially in the beginning, is this struggle to awaken the heart, to bring the heart lotus into blossom. That's why we are instructed to meditate in the heart. Sri Ramakrishna calls the heart the drawing room of God. He says, the heart of the devotee is the abode of God. He dwells no doubt in all beings, but he especially manifests himself in the heart of the devotee. He likens it to a landlord. A landlord may go to any part of his vast estate, but mostly you can find him in a certain drawing room. And the heart of the devotee is the drawing room of God. I'd like to just relate a little story told by Sri Ramakrishna. It was March 11, 1883, and it was Sri Ramakrishna's birthday. And on his birthday, so many of his devotees would come with great joy to observe the day, and there would be feasting and a lot of singing and dancing. And so on this day, they came to celebrate, and in the course of conversation, Sri Ramakrishna was telling them about the heart. He said, the darkness of the mind disappears when God is realized. In the Purana, it is said that it was as if 100 suns were shining when Rama entered the court. Why then weren't the courtiers burnt up? It was because the brilliance of Rama was not like that of a material object. As the lotus blooms when the sun rises, so the lotus of the heart of the people assembled in the court burst into blossom. Then something very interesting happened. As Sri Ramakrishna uttered these words, the lotus of the heart of the people assembled in the court burst into blossom. Sri Ramakrishna fell into ecstasy and he entered samadhi. His mind was completely withdrawn from the external world. His face was lighted with a smile. It was glowing with spiritual fervor, and he was motionless, completely absorbed within. His own heart lotus had burst into blossom, as it were. And the devotees sitting around him were amazed and wonderstruck, dumbstruck, watching him, and watched him for quite some time as he remained in that state of ecstasy. Surely they also would have felt a touch of it in his presence. After a long time, he returned to the ordinary consciousness of the world, and he drew a long breath and chanted the name of Rama, 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 Rama. Every word, as the recorder relates, every word showering nectar into the hearts of the devotees. I love this image. All the courtiers sitting in the royal court of Rama, and when Rama walks in, Rama, the avatar, the great world teacher, walks in as if shining like 100 suns. And their hearts, the lotuses of their hearts, in the presence of that sun, the lotuses all burst into blossom. So let's touch on the next line in our Shikshashtakam. Anandam buddhivardhanam pratipadam purnamrita swadanam. Now Sri Chaitanya describes an ocean of bliss, and the chanting the name of Krishna, chanting the name of God, expands this ocean, makes it overflow. Swami Prabhavananda and Christopher Isherwood put it this way: drown deep in the waves of his bliss. Drown deep. Sri Ramakrishna used to like to visit the well-known people of the day. There was one well-known Pandit Shashadhar, who was lecturing on Hinduism and making a revival of the tradition of Hinduism, which was under attack from the British missionaries. And so on Wednesday, the 25th of June, 1884, Sri Ramakrishna went to a devotee's home in Calcutta, and at 4 p.m, he went by carriage with some of the devotees to visit Pandit Shashadhar. And Sri Ramakrishna found that though the Pandit is a very good man and a noble man, but he hasn't yet drunk the nectar. He hasn't yet opened his heart lotus. He's still a little bit dry. So Sri Ramakrishna was encouraging him to dive deep, to go deeper in spiritual life. So he told him, I say to you, dive deep in God consciousness. And then he sang, as he so often did, he sang a song to drive the point home. He sang the song, dive deep, O mind, dive deep in the ocean of God's beauty. If you descend to the uttermost depths, there you will find the gem of love. Duba 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 rup shagore amar mon. Ore duba 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 rup shagore amar mon. A beautiful song. And then after he sang the song, he continued. He said, one does not die if one sinks in this ocean. If we sink in the Pacific Ocean, we'll drown. But this ocean, one does not die. This is the ocean of immortality. Once I said to Narendra, he's talking about an incident where he was talking with the future Swami Vivekananda, Narendranath. Once I said to Narendra, God is the ocean of bliss. Tell me if you want to plunge into it. Just imagine there is some syrup in a cup and that you have become a fly. Now, tell me where you will want to sip the syrup. Narendra answered, I will sit on the edge of the cup and stretch out my neck to drink, because I am sure to die if I go far into the cup. Then I said to him, but my child, this is the ocean of Satchidananda. There is no fear of death in it. This is the ocean of immortality. Only ignorant people say that one should not have an excess of devotion and divine love. How foolish! Therefore, I say to you, to the Pandit, dive into the ocean of Satchidananda. Sri Ramakrishna often used to repeat this story of Narendra thinking of himself as a fly and not wanting to dive into the cup of nectar, fearing that he would drown. But this is not a cup of water. This is a cup of amrita, of nectar. It's the nectar of immortality. This image of an ocean comes again and again in Sri Ramakrishna's teachings. The salt doll going to measure the depth of the ocean and melting away, only the infinite ocean of Satchidananda remains. Or how to meditate on the formless. Like a fish swimming in a pond, the soul swims in the ocean of the infinite. And then back to our verse, Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam. At every step, tasting his nectar at every step. There's a beautiful line in our Ram Nam, which we sing, although that line we don't sing here, but in the full Ram Nam, Dhanyaste kritinah pibanti satatam Sri Rama Namamritam. One of my favorite lines. Blessed are those fortunate ones who drink incessantly the nectar of Sri Rama's name. It's nectar, amrita. Amrita has two meanings. It means immortal, and it also means nectar. The English word ambrosia comes from the same root as the word amrita. This nectar confers immortality. Or perhaps we should say, we are already immortal. This nectar confers the realization that we are immortal, that we are the immortal soul, we are the immortal children of God, we are the immortal reflection of the divine, we are the divine itself. And the name does become like nectar. This is one of Sri Chaitanya's essential teachings, to get a taste for the divine name. Name ruchi, he calls it, ruchi, to get a taste for the name. This is the question that a devotee asked Sri Ramakrishna on April 8th, 1883. He asked him, how can I take delight in God's name? In other words, how can I get that taste? How can I begin to get a taste for God's name? Sri Ramakrishna told him, pray to God with a yearning heart that you may take delight in his name. He will certainly fulfill your desire. Then he sang two songs. The second song has this line, what a delirious fever is this that I suffer from, O Mother, thy grace is my only cure. Even for thy holy name I have no taste, O Mother. I doubt that I shall ever be cured of this malady. So then Sri Ramakrishna repeating this line, even for thy holy name I have no taste. Then he talks about the typhoid patient. He says, a typhoid patient has very little chance of recovery if he loses all taste for food. But his life need not be despaired of if he enjoys food even a little. That is why one should cultivate a taste for God's name. Any name will do, Durga, Krishna, or Shiva. Then, if through chanting of the name, one's attachment to God grows day by day, and joy fills the soul, one has nothing to fear. The delirium will certainly disappear. The grace of God will certainly descend. So we are in a delirium. We are in this delirium of this world. We are taking the non-eternal to be eternal. We're taking the unreal to be the real. We're thinking that the be-all and end-all of our life is to attain a little name and fame or build up a little bank balance. And we don't have any taste for the divine name. Well, let us get a little taste of that name. Then the pleasures of this world became to taste insipid. Sri Ramakrishna used to give the example of a drink made of molasses and a drink made of sugar candy. And the drink made of molasses is ordinary. Molasses is cheap, sugar candy is more costly. Nowadays it may be not enough difference to matter, but in those days, molasses was available everywhere, but sugar candy was a special something. Once you taste that drink made of sugar candy, the taste of the drink of molasses no longer appeals. I don't want that anymore. Once we get a taste of the nectar of God's name, the nectar of the worldly flowers no longer tastes good. And he says, tasting his nectar at every step, pratipadam, at every step. This always makes me think of my friends up in Portland. When I visited, we went for a hike. And somehow they took me for a hike in the mountains, and pretty soon we stopped talking, and we just walked in silence. And it turns out that this was their regular practice, and this is also my regular practice. And they said they put it right on. They hit the nail right on the head. They said, "Walk a japa, walk a japa, walk and japa." Japa means repeating the mantra, repeating the name of the Lord. With every step, it's a beautiful practice to take a walk, and rather than yakking about this, that, and everything under the sun, take the name of the Lord. At every step, at every moment, take the name of the Lord. We can fill the whole day with the Lord's name. Some people say, gosh, that sounds terribly boring, just repeating the Lord's name over and over and over again. Well, look at what we usually do with our minds. Is it any more interesting? Most we let it run around all the times that so-and-so offended us, or what we should have told so-and-so, or all those kind of things. Actually, the name of God gets very interesting as we begin to repeat it, as we begin to taste the nectar of the divine name. It becomes very interesting to repeat it. Very interesting indeed. It's a wonderful Indian story about the elephant walking in, not a tamed elephant, walking through the village, maybe walking through the town at the head of a marriage procession. No proper Indian wedding is complete without a marriage procession, and the procession is not really great unless there's at least one elephant at the head of it. So the elephant is walking in the marriage procession, and of course there's a mahout, the keeper of the elephant, the guide, sitting on the back. And the elephant has this roving trunk, and the trunk is swinging to the right and swinging to the left. And as the elephant is passing a fruit seller with big bunches of bananas for sale, the elephant just reaches out and grabs that bunch of bananas and throws it in its mouth. And then at the next place, there's a big basket of apples, and it grabs an apple, throws it in its mouth. It's no way to control it. So what's to be done? This can't be. We can't have a good marriage procession with an elephant like that. Well, the Mahout puts a nice bamboo staff, gives a nice bamboo staff to the elephant and says, you hold this in your trunk. Maybe there'll be a flag on the end of it. So the elephant then wraps its trunk around this staff and he's fooled. He thinks, wow, this is a great, I'm carrying this staff at the head of the procession, not realizing that now his trunk is not available to snatch all the tasty things along the side of the road. So give the mind a staff to hold on to. That's the mantra. The mind is like the trunk of an elephant, constantly running after this and that. The name of God is like a staff. Hold on to that staff and keep it steady. Keep it in the here and now. In the final line of the first verse, Sri Chaitanya likens the name to Sarvatma Snapanam Param, a supreme bath for all souls, a bath, bathe in his name. Sri Ramakrishna likens it to going for a bath in the river. Now, some people go to the river and they want to have a bath in the river, and so they go and they enter the water and they have their bath and they get the merit. They're bathing in the Ganges. They get the merit of bathing in the Ganges. And somebody else he's not planning to have a bath, just standing on the bank, but his friend, mischievous friend, pushes him in and he falls in the river and he also gets wet. He also gets the benefit of bathing in the Ganges. He also gets the merit of a Ganges bath. He wasn't planning on it. And somebody else is fast asleep, snoring soundly, and someone comes along with a jar of Ganges water and sprinkles it all over that person. This person also gets the merit of the purifying influence of the Mother Ganges. So, like this, knowingly or unknowingly, in whatever state we utter God's name, we acquire the merit. Like a bath. Sri Ramakrishna likens it to a bath. Sri Chaitanya and his companion, Nityananda, were always promoting the chanting of God's name. And they were able to convert so many worldly people, really people immersed in worldliness, to the chanting of God's name and tasting that nectar, and terrible ruffians. And they developed a ruse for getting people to chant the name of the Lord. Sri Ramakrishna used to tell about this. He said, worldly people will never listen to you if you ask them to renounce everything and get absorbed at the lotus feet of God. So he says, therefore Chaitanya and Nitai, that's Nityananda, after some deliberation, made an arrangement to attract the worldly. They would say to such persons, come, repeat the name of Hari. You shall have a delicious soup of catfish and the embrace of a young woman. In Bengali, it's very nice. They would say, Magur machir jhol, jupati meer kol, bol Hari bol. Hari bol means chant the name of Hari. Magur machir jhol, this is the soup of catfish. Jupati meer kol, the embrace of a young woman. And bol Hari bol. So many people, Sri Ramakrishna says, many people attracted by the fish and the woman would chant the name of God. After tasting a little of the nectar of God's hallowed name, they would soon realize that the fish soup really meant the tears they shed for the love of God. The tears taste salty, no? So the fish soup was really the tears they shed for the love of God, while the young woman signified the earth. The embrace of the woman meant rolling on the ground in the rapture of divine love. So this nectar of the divine name takes us all the way to ecstasy when we roll on the earth, getting the embrace of the earth in divine love. And then I'm going to jump to the 6th verse of our Shikshashtakam. Then, as in translation. Ah, how I long for the day when in chanting thy name the tears will spill down from my eyes, and my throat will refuse to utter its prayers, choking and stammering with ecstasy, when all the hairs of my body will stand on end with joy. Sri Ramakrishna and Sri Chaitanya were the perfect examples of this state, when in chanting the name the tears would spill down. Sri Chaitanya, his whole chest would be wet with tears flowing from his eyes. Sri Ramakrishna also would experience this, when just the tears are flowing down from his eyes, wetting his shirt, and all the hairs of his body would be standing on end. This kind of ecstasy. When he couldn't pronounce the name of God, he would become so intoxicated, as it were, with the name of God that he couldn't pronounce it clearly. There's that beautiful song, I drink no ordinary wine, but wine of everlasting bliss. As I repeat my mother Kali's name, it so intoxicates my mind that people take me to be drunk. See, Ramakrishna, people would often think, there goes a drunkard. He wouldn't be able to walk straight under the influence of this ecstasy. And finally, Sri Chaitanya finishes this 8 instructions. The last instruction is embodying the ideal of complete and absolute surrender to the divine. He says, prostrate at thy feet, let me be in unwavering devotion, neither imploring the embrace of thine arms, nor bewailing the withdrawal of thy presence, though it tears my soul asunder. O thou, who stealest the hearts of thy devotees, do with me what thou wilt, for thou art my heart's beloved, thou and thou alone. Om Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyai Stavai Vedaya Sangapada Kramopanishadai Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyanavastita Tadgatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yogino Yasyantam Navidu Surasuragana Devaya Tasmai Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Our salutations to him who is the truth of life and existence, and whom the sages call by various names. Our salutations to him whose glory is sung in the sacred hymns of the various scriptures of the world, but whose limitless and infinite grandeur no mortal mind can comprehend. Our salutations to him on whom the devotees meditate in the shrine of their hearts and realize his ineffable presence in their deepest contemplations. May he illumine our understanding and prompt our minds to the path of truth and righteousness. May he reveal himself unto our souls and dispel the gloom of delusion, fear, doubt, and darkness. Om, peace, peace, peace. Peace be unto us, peace be unto all beings.